When I turned 25, I married Jack, a medical professor, just as I wished. He has a strong desire for control, but he doesn't love me. It's because I have the heart of his first love inside me. Jack said, "Live well, and I'll give you anything you want." Later, when I was gravely ill and in unbearable pain, Jack used every method to keep me alive. "Jesse, you have to live, even if it's just for this heart." Until his first love, who was presumed dead, surfaced again. I took my last breath, and Jack went mad. Years after graduation, stories of the renowned surgeon Jack was still spreading among my classmates. On an ordinary weekend, old classmates, who hadn't met in 3 years, gathered together. Amidst the lively chatter, the class monitor asked me, "Jesse, why didn't Jack come?" I awkwardly said, "He has a surgery tonight." A lot of successful classmates came to this reunion, but no one can compare with Jack, the famous medical professor from University A. In his early 30s, he has made significant achievements in organ transplantation. His hands are worth a fortune. The class monitor probably invited me mainly because of Jack. I remember back then, Jesse went through a lot to pursue Jack. Someone brought it up, and everyone got interested. "Yeah, Jesse, how did you win him over?" There was a tinge of bitterness in my smile. Just like that, they all thought I secretly worked hard to win over the high-caliber flower of the medical school. But they didn't know the endless bitterness behind this so-called perfect match. If I could do it over, I'd rather never have met Jack. Jack arrived when the reunion was about to end. Fresh out of surgery, the smell of disinfectant diluted the alcohol in the air when he walked in. He still had that same noble, unattainable demeanor. Everyone acted like they were meeting a VIP. The class monitor, in high spirits, casually mentioned, "Oh, Miss Diana said Jesse will get the spot to go to Europe next month. Jack, you won't be reluctant, right?" I froze and nervously looked at Jack. I hadn't had the chance to tell him about this yet. Now he learned it from someone else. Jack was taken aback, then smiled calmly. "She sleeps lightly and doesn't rest well in unfamiliar places. She probably can't go. I'll personally discuss this with Ms. Diana." Then he patted my head. "Stay home. I'll take you on a vacation next month." This made everyone envious. "Jesse, you're so lucky to have such a happy married life. I'm jealous. Why are you still thinking about Europe?" "Don't go." But I had worked hard for that spot. I picked up my bag, forcing a smile. "Sorry, something came up at home. I need to leave." Then I turned and walked out. Leaving the warm indoors, I felt the cold wind. A familiar scent of disinfectant filled the air as a jacket was draped over my shoulders. "Don't go out in the rain. It's too cold. You can't handle it." I smirked, dismissing any thoughts of arguing. "All right." On the way back, Jack drove. I hesitated and brought up the matter again. "I don't want to go on a vacation next month. I want to go to Europe." Jack tapped the steering wheel, saying nothing. When he's like this, it usually means he's considering denying my request. "I won't risk my health, I promise." At a red light, Jack turned to look at me. His calm eyes pierced through the night. "Jesse, I don't want to take any chances." My smile froze, and I felt a slight pain in my heart. He cares about my body far more than I do. Because the heart beating warmly in my chest belongs to his first love, Tina. All my passions and pursuits have to give way to this heart. The world thinks Jack loves me deeply, not knowing that it's this heart that means the world to him. On the way back, we plunged into a cold war. When we got out of the car, I walked ahead, not caring if Jack followed. I almost shut the door on his hand. "Jesse, don't throw a fit." I acted stubbornly. "I'm a person, not your possession. Is it wrong to pursue my dreams?" Jack wrapped his arms around my waist, pressing me against the entrance, planting a cool kiss. "Jesse, you lack nothing. Bags, shoes, clothes, jewelry, and even other people's envy. You have it all. Why run out and suffer?" Indeed, Jack gave me many things. Under his glow, I could live peacefully for the rest of my life. But that's not what I want. I avoided his touch and for the first time, spoke to him in a firm tone. "I'm not asking for permission. I don't want to die with regrets in the future." The atmosphere stiffened. Jack's deep eyes were hidden in the night, unreadable. A cold laugh spread through. "Jesse, have I lost control over you?" He picked me up, carrying me to the bedroom. His kisses were passionate and lingering, making me fall deep into a fervent whirlpool. Jack knew too well how to pacify me. His skilled hands always made me surrender. "Be good, you know I can't do without you. Jesse, I only love you." I looked up at him, speaking of love so fervently. Who'd think that before the heart transplant, Jack treated me with indifference. After the surgery, it was like he fell madly in love with me overnight. He was filled with a possessive desire for me. I once thought he loved me to death, but I later realized it was because he placed Tina's heart into my chest himself. Sadly, I learned this too late. Late at night, Jack stopped comforting me after I lashed out. He wiped away my tears, his fingers gliding over my chest scar. Jessie, I performed your surgery. I have to be responsible for your body. I've heard this excuse too many times. This time, I had enough. Jack carried me to the bathroom. Just as we finished, he got a phone call. A woman's crying voice came through. Brother-in-law. I accidentally broke the vase sister left behind. I'm sorry. Lying in bed, I didn't need to guess that it was Tina's sister calling. She is called Ruth, a college girl, right in the prime of her youth. She looks a lot like Tina. I remember when Tina passed away, she was Ruth's age. Maybe because she looked so much like Tina, Jack took care of Ruth's tuition and living expenses. Jack explained, she's Tina's sister, so I should take care of her. Because of this, Ruth loved to show off in front of me. Her favorite line was, if it weren't for you having my sister's heart, Jack would have married me. After hanging up the phone, when Jack got up to dress, I stopped him. It's too late. It's just a broken vase. Go tomorrow. I was just unwilling. Why does a broken vase matter more than a living person? Jack's gaze was cold and heavy in the dark. He pressed me back onto the bed, sidestepping. Sleep early. Good night. With the faint sound of the door closing, Jack left. I immediately received a text from Ruth. Just a vase, you wish. Why do you think you deserve to be compared to my sister and me? A mere container. You really think you're something. Turns out, when I stopped Jack, he hadn't hung up the phone yet. My freshly washed hair slowly dried in the wind. My body was completely cold. Angry, I responded, look who's talking. Using your sister's tragedy, you're no angel. Putting down my phone, my thoughts drifted to 3 years ago. That summer, news of renowned violinist Tina's death spread all over the internet. The media mourned the tragic, early death of such a talented girl. The biggest rumor at the time was that Tina was Jack's girlfriend. A musical genius and a medical genius, quite the match. But I had chased Jack for so long, and never saw Tina by his side. After hearing the news, I anxiously waited at the hospital where Jack worked. Apprehensively, I waited a few days before I saw Jack. He looked the same as always, pristine to an obsessive degree. Not at all like the heartbroken, gaunt man the rumors described. That was the happiest day of my life, because Jack spoke a long sentence to me for the first time. He said, Jessie, do you have a congenital heart disease and are waiting for a transplant? I found a donor organ and can help you. If you agree, you can have the surgery soon. It felt like a dream to me. Doctors had said without a heart transplant, I might not live past my 20s. With surgery, there was hope for a longer life. So I agreed almost without hesitation. That day, I lay on the cold metal table in the operating room. The man I liked was wearing a green surgical gown, standing against the harsh white lights, looking like a savior. When I woke up, Jack was sitting by my side. His gentle gaze was captivating. He said, Jessie, be my girlfriend, okay? If I had never known whose heart it was, maybe my life would have always been happy. I barely slept all night. The next morning, I got a call from my assistant. Jessie, the Europe spot is gone. I sat up in bed, bewildered. Tom had reserved that spot for me. How could it be gone? I heard someone pulled strings to get a special student from your school in. Before I could respond to my assistant, Tom texted me, since you're not feeling well, don't push yourself, rest up. I quickly called Tom. Tom, I'm feeling fine. Tom sounded puzzled. Jack called me this morning to cancel it, saying you were unwell. He didn't discuss it with me, Tom. I've been waiting for this opportunity for half a year. Can you? It's too late, Tom sighed. He pushed a girl named Ruth. The list has already been submitted. With no other options, I could only beg. Tom, even if it's as a volunteer or a temp, I'll do whatever it takes to join the team in Europe. Sure, I'll try. Wait for my news. After dealing with that, I checked Ruth's Facebook. There was a photo of an application form. Another pampered day. Someone commented, that team is tough to join. How did you manage it? Ruth replied with a smirking emoji. Can't help it. He spoils me. Ha ha. I felt a sharp pain in my chest. After taking some medicine, I decided to confront Jack. He didn't come home last night, and had texted me late saying he was called back for surgery. At the hospital, I picked up a report. It was from a checkup Jack arranged a week ago. It showed everything was normal. Heart function is good, suitable for moderate exercise. I intended to use this report to convince him to let me go to Europe. As I reached his office, I heard voices from inside. It's too much to cancel on Jessie after she waited so long. The voice belonged to Jack's college roommate and now colleague, Fred. Jack coldly replied, if she had an accident abroad, I couldn't help. Come on, I saw her checkup. With regular medication, she's as healthy as anyone. We're insiders. Don't try to fool me. Jack didn't respond. Fred probed. Is it for that girl? Yes, although I knew this was true. Hearing Jack confirm it so bluntly still hurt. Jack's voice was cold and calm. I don't care about her life, but the heart can't be compromised. My heart pounded violently at those words. Driven by continuous heartache, I clutched my chest and slowly squatted down as tears streamed uncontrollably. When I first heard the truth about our marriage from Ruth, I cried. For a long time, I convinced myself that human hearts are made of flesh. Spending time together, how could feelings not develop? But the fact proved Jack's heart was made of stone. That day, I didn't rush into the office. I sat, dazed, on a bench in the hospital for a long time, until Tom messaged. There's a volunteer spot, but it involves a lot of menial work. Do you want it? I agreed without hesitation. Next up was Mr. Tom's confirmation. Pack up quickly, the team is leaving today. On the way back, I sat in a cab, trying my hardest to hold back my sobs. Jack called me, but I hung up, quickly packed my things and headed to the airport. Took some important documents with me before leaving, because I want a divorce. Ruth saw me at the airport and her expression was complicated. I was wearing my volunteer uniform, carrying a box of bottled water, going up to each team member waiting to board, offering them some. Ruth, prideful and smug, waved at me. Hey, come here. I'm thirsty. I ignored her and walked straight to Mr. Tom. Mr. Tom, would you like some water? Ruth got annoyed. Are you deaf? I'm talking to you. Using my sister's heart like it's no big deal. I shot back with a cold face. Why don't you donate a kidney? I'd kneel right down for you. I'm not usually quick to anger, but seeing that face, I couldn't hold back. I think I'm losing it. Every time I see Ruth, I want to hit her. Ruth shouted, is this how you treat the family of an organ donor? Her words made the people around point fingers at me. Some even started taking pictures with their phones. Mr. Tom frowned. All right, if you're thirsty, get it yourself. Stop making a scene. It's been so long since anyone stood up for me that I hung my head, eyes a bit red. Mr. Tom, I'm sorry for causing trouble. Mr. Tom sighed. I didn't call you here to be bullied. Ruth huffed and furiously typed on her phone. The boarding announcement rang out, and everyone started to get on the plane. After a long, over 20-hour flight, we arrived in Europe. As soon as the plane landed, I had several missed calls on my phone, all from Jack. I didn't want to deal with him, but he called Ruth. Ruth answered shortly and then smugly handed the phone to me. Jack's icy voice came clearly through the receiver. Jesse, why did you act on your own? I could tell he was angry. The last time he sounded like this was when I mentioned divorce. I felt wronged and dryly accused. You decided to give the spot to Ruth without consulting me. Ruth let out a scoff, like she was laughing at my audacity. There was a long silence on the other end, so long it made me uneasy. I thought Jack would yell at me, but he said nothing and hung up. The beeping tone disrupted all my plans. No apology, no explanation, not even a question. All his anger was left in that abrupt end, making me doubt myself, wondering if I had made a mistake. But I quickly realized it shouldn't be like this. I wasn't wrong. It was Jack's control over me all these years that made me feel wrong. I wiped my tears, threw the phone back at Ruth. She yelped in pain. The next day, the day before we were to head to Vienna, I saw Jack at the hotel entrance. Ruth and I had just stepped out of the elevator. The moment Ruth saw Jack, her eyes lit up, and she ran to him quickly. Brother-in-law. Even after Tina's death for so long, Ruth still refused to change how she addressed him. And Jack never corrected her. His cold gaze softened instantly. I need to talk to Jesse. I'll take you out to eat later. Ruth pouted playfully. Okay. She shot me a gloating look. I knew she had tattled. Jack said seriously, Jesse, we need to talk. In a corner of the hotel lobby, my sharp voice rang out. I don't think I did anything wrong. You can't yell at me. My eyes betrayed me, turning red with emotion. Jack sat across from me, his dark eyes fixed on my face. For a moment, I thought he wanted to strangle me, but that feeling passed quickly. He returned to his calm, gentlemanly demeanor. In a steady tone, he said, You're right, it's me who's wrong. What do you mean? I'm wrong for not completely blocking your path. Jack took a sip of hot tea and said slowly, This time, do what you want, but there won't be a next time. I knew with his connections, he could make things happen. I stood up abruptly, furious. Jack, what gives you the right to control me? I have the right to choose. Right? He chuckled coldly, showing no mercy. With someone else's heart in you, what right do you have? He finally said it, blunt and cruel. So in his eyes, I should be grateful and indebted to become the bearer of this heart. I was breathless with anger. I picked up the water in front of me and threw it in Jack's face. I'm a recipient of an organ donation, not your prisoner. Lemon water dripped down Jack's jaw. For the first time, I saw mockery in his dark eyes. He said nothing, but Ruth ran out from a corner in a panic, pulling out a handkerchief to wipe his face. Jessie, who gave you permission to treat my brother-in-law like this? I lost it, throwing water at her too. The violent emotion made my heart race. My vision went black. Ruth screamed as she got drenched. Brother-in-law, she's lost it, hasn't she? Jack's expression turned completely cold. I thought he would scold me, make me apologize to Ruth, but he calmly asked the waiter for some napkins, handed them to Ruth, and gave the waiter an apologetic smile. In fluent English, he said, "Sorry, my wife has been emotionally unwell lately. Sorry for the trouble." Everyone present heard him. In front of everyone, Jack painted me as a lunatic. Then he looked down and warned Ruth with his eyes. "Didn't you say you're hungry? I'll take you to eat." Ruth knew she'd gotten into trouble and stuck out her tongue. "Jack, I'm feeling tightness in my chest," I instinctively called out to him. In a disappointed tone, Jack said, "I'm heading to a conference in Vienna soon, and we'll be traveling together. Do whatever you want. I can't control you. Just remember to take your medicine on time. After my heart transplant surgery, I have to take medication long-term to prevent organ rejection." It's one of his most frequent reminders. Then he walked away with Ruth, while I, feeling really unwell, just went back to the hotel. The hotel service was pretty bad. The food they brought was always cold. I only took a couple of bites before lying back down on the bed. I opened my phone and saw a tweet from Ruth. It was a nice day, and Ruth and Jack were sitting in a fast food place. Ruth had a kid's meal in front of her, while Jack sat across from her, looking at his phone with a resigned smile on his face. I felt a bit heartbroken. I wasn't even as carefree as Ruth. She could do whatever she wanted. If something went wrong, Jack would have her back. But because of my heart, I had to be incredibly cautious. No alcohol, no junk food, no late nights, no extreme emotions. I don't even have the right to be happy. Smiling in front of Jack feels like a crime. This life is so flavorless. The rest of the trip went smoothly as per the investigation group's plan. We arrived in Vienna on the third day. Jack even stretched his trip to the end of the month. Fred texted me, "Wow, Miss Jessie, how smitten is our Professor Jack with you? The dean says if he doesn't come back soon, his salary is getting docked." I replied with a facepalm emoji. I guess Jack didn't extend his trip for me. Vienna is a place Tina once stayed. I've heard Ruth beg Jack multiple times to go there to remember her sister. As it got darker, the team was counting how many wanted to attend the concert. There were only 2 tickets left. Ruth said, "Jessie has a heart problem, and she's a volunteer. She shouldn't go." Technically, volunteers should indeed be last in line, but one of those tickets was given to me by Mr. John. Without flinching, I walked past Ruth and took a ticket from the team leader. Ruth stomped her foot angrily. "Jessie, who said you could take a ticket?" Ignoring her yelling, I walked toward the concert hall entrance, but I didn't expect her to call Jack. A few minutes later, she rushed at me with her phone on speaker, knocking me off balance. "Jessie, you can't go to crowded places. Listen to me, it's for your own good." Here we go again. Every time, I convince myself that Jack's doing it for my sake. But this time, is it still the same? "Jack, can you shut up?" My voice was shaking. "Just this once, please shut up. She already has 1 ticket. Even if I waste this one, I won't give it to her." Jack paused, then said, "Okay." Ruth was stunned by his concession and glared at me, clearly unhappy. I knew she initially planned to go with Jack. Didn't expect Jack to not fix things with me. When it was time to enter, a staff member stopped me. Your family called us. They said you have a severe heart condition and provided medical proof. Sorry, for your health, we can't let you in." Everyone had passed the security check and was waiting for me. It was awkward. I patiently explained to the staff, "My heart condition is stable now. Sorry, we can't confirm that." Suddenly, all eyes were on me. Some were sympathetic, some were curious. After all, no one expected Jack to stop his wife from attending like this. Everyone knew my health was stable, and a small concert wouldn't affect it. But Jack was too authoritative. No venue would risk it. Ruth, blocked behind me, bumped into me and pushed her way through. She turned back with a smug tongue out. "Your ticket is useless now." At that moment, I had only one thought. If I can't watch the concert, neither can she. I suddenly slapped her, grabbing her hair and dragging her out of the gate. With some force, Ruth screamed in pain. For the next few minutes, we fought. She's younger and stronger. If you think about it, we were both hitting each other. Honestly, I didn't want to embarrass myself in a foreign country, but too much frustration had built up. Not fighting back would drive me crazy. When Jack arrived, Ruth was sobbing on the ground, and I was sitting quietly by the fountain, blood trickling down my forehead. Ruth threw herself into Jack's arms, tearfully accusing me, brother-in-law. Why does she get to do this? How dare she hit me? Jack covered Ruth with his coat, didn't ask a single question, and directly ordered me, Jesse, apologize. I was shaking with anger. Why isn't she apologizing to me? Because you hit first. I lost control and shouted at him. You should know why I hit her. I felt my heart race, my breathing quicken, and chills run through my body. Jack coldly replied, ignoring everything else. Don't you know your own condition? She's looking out for you, and you still think you're right. This time, I stayed silent, huddling by the fountain. I tried to calm my raging emotions and failing body. As night deepened, neon lights lit the streets. Ruth, thinking she had won, softly complained to Jack. Never seen such a clueless woman. If she gave it to me earlier, it'd be over. It's just ridiculous. As the fountain's water sparkled in a dazzling display, I went stiff and fell backward into the pool. My heart condition flared up. I was rushed to the local hospital. Rumor has it, Jack nearly lost it and tried to break into the emergency room. It took everyone to hold him back. Ruth, watching nearby, mocked my frailty until Jack shouted at her, calling her out right there. Ruth boarded the plane home, crying her eyes out. I walked the thin line between life and death, and when I woke up, I saw Jack by my bedside. He looked haggard, with dark circles under his eyes, like he hadn't slept for days. Those deep, dark eyes stared coldly, sending chills down my spine. But for the first time, I felt a sense of relief. So, he can feel pain too. Watching the heartbeat of someone you love slowly stop must be heartbreaking. I looked at him and said calmly, we should get a divorce. He cared for me but never saw me as someone with dignity. I don't want to live like this anymore. Jack let out a bitter laugh. A divorce? You think I'd just let you go? He rarely got angry with me. I told you not to come to Europe. Why didn't you listen? Don't you know heart patients need to control their emotions? Look at the state of your body, and you still dared to fight with Ruth. Jesse, you're always so self-righteous. His words got harsher with each sentence. His fear over the past few days made him lash out at me. But he forgot. If it weren't for Ruth, this trip to Europe would have been uneventful for me. I closed my eyes, unwilling to say another word. Jack suddenly grabbed my face, forcing me to look at him. He warned me, word by word. Jesse, take care of yourself. Don't cause trouble, understand? I smiled faintly. Jack, I feel like I don't have much time left. Can't you just treat me a little better? Jack stormed out angrily after hearing that. It took a long time for me to recover. By the time I was discharged, I had lost a lot of weight. This incident left my body much worse off than before. I was practically short of breath after just a few steps. By the time things slowed down, it was already April. Birds sang, and the grass grew green. I returned to my homeland. Right now, I'm giving Jack the silent treatment. When I got home, I went straight to the bedroom. Jack followed behind, reminding me, I've got some work to catch up on, so I'll be staying at the hospital for a few days. The medicine's on the nightstand, remember to take it. Okay, honestly, I don't care where he goes. Maybe to console a heartbroken Ruth, or some other purpose, but none of that has anything to do with me anymore. Once Jack left, I picked up my phone and contacted a lawyer. The lawyer told me that if Jack didn't agree to the divorce, I'd have to be separated for over a year to get it finalized. So I started looking for houses in other cities behind Jack's back. But ever since that hospital stay, my health hasn't been good. I frequently experienced chest tightness and palpitations. I secretly saw another doctor, and the prognosis wasn't optimistic. I can't bear to think it might be less than a year before Jack becomes a widower. That day, after visiting several places with a real estate agent, around 12:30 p.m., passing by a small park, I was too tired and had to sit down to watch kids feed pigeons nearby. Then I stumbled upon Ruth's latest Twitter update. Older men still know how to apologize convincingly. I chuckled and indifferently pocketed my phone. The midday sun was warm, heating my hair and coat. Suddenly, someone stood in front of me, blocking the sunlight. Are you Jesse? It was a woman's voice. I opened my eyes and saw a face both familiar and strange, and for a moment, I was stunned. I had seen this face in Jack's hidden photos. Why does she look so much like Tina? The woman smiled and tucked her hair. My sister told me you bullied her. Over these years of my absence, you all thought I was dead. Seeing me gaze blankly at her, Tina smirked arrogantly. Hi, let's formally introduce ourselves. I'm Jack's first love, Tina. Can you keep it a secret for me? I want to surprise him. She seemed to look for fear of losing Jack on my face, but a dull pain in my chest, like a heavy stone, made it hard for me to breathe. If Tina is alive, Then whose heart is inside me? Tina noticed my shock and explained. Your heart was donated by my senior from the same team, escorted back by our teacher. Somehow, it got miscommunicated as mine. I've been afraid to see Jack, for fear he'd blame me for leaving without a word. Now I'm back. Can you give him back to me? I forced myself up and walked in the direction I came from. Tears streamed down my face. So all these years of torment were a joke. I could have been living happily all along. The wind picked up, and it gradually got cooler. I fumbled for my phone, ready to call Jack. As soon as he picked up, everything went black, and I fell forward. I ended up in the ICU. They said Jack did everything he could to save me, pulling me back from the brink of death. Of course, it wasn't without a cost. I was covered in tubes. A long white tube connected to the respirator at the head of the bed. The other end stuck down my throat. I couldn't speak. Many came to see me, telling me I'd get better. But I'm ill, not stupid. Their expressions told me I didn't have much time left. Waking up from complex dreams, someone was holding my hand. Jack stood by me, wearing a white coat, looking at me tenderly. Jessie, you're awake. When I had my organ transplant, those were also the first words he said to me. Back then, it sounded heavenly. Now, like the devil's whisper. I instinctively tried to pull out the tubes, but found my hands and feet restrained. Jack whispered, coaxing me gently, be good, focus on getting better. Don't fight it. I remember telling Jack if it came to the end, I didn't want to be resuscitated, because I've seen those in the ICU like this, utterly stripped of dignity. But evidently, Jack didn't respect my choice. He was my next of kin. He chose to use every measure to keep me alive till the last moment. Of course, how could I expect him to go easy on me? He never loved me, only loved that heart. Didn't he know Tina was alive? I started shaking my hands bound to the rails, trying to tell him the truth. Jack frowned, give her a sedative. Afterwards, he smoothed my messy hair and gently kissed my forehead. Jessie, get some more sleep. Don't worry, I'll stay by your side. I couldn't stop myself from closing my eyes and falling into a deep sleep. I lost count of how many times I've flirted with death. The feeling is terrible. Every time I'm revived from unconsciousness, I plunge into deep despair. Even the nurse next to me would say sympathetically, Professor Jack Shaw is ruthless, saving her 6 times now. Her ribs are already broken. If I were family, I'd let her go with dignity. Yeah, even others get it. Why doesn't Jack? Jack doesn't visit me much lately, because every time he does, I throw a fit. Once or twice, he would patiently calm me down, but as it happened more, he grew impatient. Jessie, who can you blame for being like this? You insisted on going to Europe, didn't you? Please, just listen to me, alright? Eventually, I gave up trying to tell Jack the truth. After all, I can't speak. My body is weak, and I'm terminally ill. Even writing is a struggle. In the end, even dying became a luxury. I often wonder what Tina is up to. Is she finding it amusing, playing hide and seek with Jack and not coming out? If she came earlier, would I have left with dignity? Lying in the ICU, day after night, I lost the sense of time. One warm afternoon, the sun shone through the window, falling right on me, just like many years ago, after my surgery. Filled with hope, suddenly, I felt a glimmer of hope. That time for life, this time for death. My body suddenly felt lighter. I could even write a few words. Jack seemed to sense something, casually saying, Jessie, just stay calm, okay? Live well, I'll promise you anything. This is a special medicine. Once you take it, you'll get better. What a joke, this bastard. Is he comforting me or himself? Maybe Jack himself didn't realize. Since we got married, the phrase he said to me the most was take your medicine. He doesn't even know my favorite food. The restraints were loosened a bit by the nurse earlier. I grabbed the pen beside me and tried hard to write something on the whiteboard. At the last moment, I wanted to leave something behind. Thought about it and started writing. Suddenly, a nurse walked in. Professor Jack, someone is here for you. She says her name is Tina. Jack froze, and after a brief silence, suddenly let go of my hand and rushed out. At the same time, my vision went dark. I heard the monitor alarm, announcing that I was critically ill again. But this time, Jack probably wouldn't come back. As Jack rushed out of the office, he saw that familiar face, just like back then, clean and playful. Tina walked up to him with her long hair over her shoulder, smiling. What's up, Professor? Don't recognize me? Tina. Jack felt a surreal sense, mumbling, didn't you pass away? A short regret flashed across Tina's face. It's all because of the reporter's poor language skills. They misheard. I've been abroad for so many years, and never knew they reported it like that. But that heart. Tina blinked, The heart was from a senior in our music group who died in an accident. It was sent back to the country and donated to a girl. When she mentioned the girl, Jack felt a jolt inside. At that moment, Jesse suddenly seized all his rationality. Ignoring Tina's calls, he rushed back, a feeling insisting that if he didn't hurry, he'd never see Jesse again. As he opened the door, Jack was still thinking about what Jesse was trying so hard to write. He suddenly wanted to see it. Turning the corner, all he saw was white. Many colleagues in white coats surrounded Jesse's bed. On the monitor beside, a straight line stretched mercilessly. No more fluctuations. Jack's mind buzzed. He heard Fred's voice, seemingly announcing the time of death. Who died? For the first time, Jack found the ICU equipment noise infuriating. He rushed over, pushing through the crowd, seeing a calm Jessie. She was very pale, quietly lying there, as if asleep. Just minutes ago, Jessie was looking at him. Seemed like she even tried to smile, and started to write something. Jack gently touched her face, called out, "Jessie." The only response was a cold corpse. An absurd feeling swept over his mind instantly. How could Jessie be dead? Fred's words were edged with sarcasm. Jessie was an orphan, and you just found your first love. Guessing you wouldn't have time for Jessie's affairs. My wife and I will take care of it. Fred had just realized why he treated Jessie this way. Just for a heart, he tormented someone to death. The news spread through the department. No one stood with Jack now. Suddenly thinking of something, Jack quickly looked at Jessie's right hand. He saw the whiteboard holding the pen Jessie used. Next to it was a shaky line of writing, a mix of initials and pinyin. Barely readable. "I like spicy hot pot." Jack suddenly remembered what he said earlier. "Take your medicine. I like spicy hot pot." This unremarkable phrase now felt like a heavy blow, breaking the floodgates. It laid their past clear for Jack, showing just how awful he had been. Saying countless times to take medicine, yet not knowing her favorite food. Jack suddenly went crazy, grabbing Jessie off the bed. "Jessie, get up. I'll take you for spicy hot pot." Fred and the nurses rushed to hold back Jack. Jack let out an anguished roar. "Let go of me. I'm taking her away." Fred punched Jack hard. "Get a grip. Jessie is dead." Jessie had just died, her body still soft. She was yanked, flopping around, her head hitting the bedside railing with a thud. Fred was really furious, shouting, "Jack, do you want me to call the police? If you love her that much, why didn't you care earlier?" Jessie had visited the department many times, brought small gifts for everyone and helped out a lot. Everyone liked her. Watching Jessie leave, everyone felt a mix of relief and sorrow. They were relieved that she was finally free from a tough life, but they were sad to see such a good person go. Jack lost it completely. After taking a punch, he suddenly grabbed Fred by the collar and demanded, "Why didn't you try to save her? What kind of doctor are you?" Fred, looking like he'd just heard a joke, shoved Jack away and sneered, "Jack, have some decency. Do you really think Jessie wanted you to keep dragging her back from death's door? Her last moment was seeing you turn your back on her. What? Should I keep her alive just so she can watch you marry Tina and drink to your happiness?" These words cut through Jack like a knife, exposing his darkest secrets. They left him feeling utterly ashamed. Earlier, he had heard the machine's alert, but his mind was so full of Tina that he thought, maybe it's just another emergency patient. With Fred around, leaving for a moment won't matter. Fred mocked him, "Jack, you're unfit to be a husband or a doctor." Jack held Jessie's body in silence for a long time. When Fred returned to his office, he found Tina bored, playing Minesweeper on Jack's computer. "This is a hospital. Unrelated personnel should stay away from the doctor's workspace," Fred said, feeling only sadness. Tina widened her eyes in shock. I'm Tina." Tina, the name that had troubled Jessie's whole life. The name that had caused her death, and now Tina had the audacity to say it proudly. Fred couldn't hold back and asked, "I heard you came back a while ago. Why didn't you show up sooner?" "Of course. I was waiting for Jessie to die," Tina said, sticking out her tongue. "I didn't want to be the third wheel." Fred turned away, not wanting to speak further. He feared he might lose control and hit her. Unexpectedly, after Jessie died, Jack didn't end up with Tina. He insisted on handling all of Jessie's posthumous affairs himself. Her body couldn't be kept at the hospital for long, so it was taken to the funeral home the same day. 3 days later, they held a farewell ceremony and cremated her. Jack thought Jessie had no family and few friends, but on the day of the farewell, the place was packed. Fred and his wife were there, along with many classmates Jack had forgotten, and friends from all walks of life. Everyone had red eyes, clearly from crying. A few old classmates came up to him and thanked him sincerely. "Professor Jack, thank you for giving Jessie so many more years of life. Our condolences." Although said without ill intent, these words felt like a slap to Jack's face. He lowered his head, eyes reddening with shame. "This is a kite Jessie made. I brought it," one person said. "And here's a photo from that year we went skiing," another added. Many mementos were handed to Jack. At home, he had only gathered a few of Jessie's personal items and a locked diary. He realized he never really knew Jessie. She had a wide range of friends, varied interests, and loved off-roading and adventure. Comparing her colorful earlier life to the later years, Jessie seemed like a lifeless tree, cautious and reserved. Even to have a bowl of spicy hot pot, she sought his opinion. He hadn't been good to her at all. "Jack, you probably haven't eaten today. Wanna grab lunch with me?" Tina appeared, her face made up with lipstick and glittery eyeshadow. Jack felt a wave of nausea. "If you're not here to honor her, you can leave. There's no need to show up like this." These beauty tips were things Jessie had taught him when they first married. Every time they went out together, she'd dress up like this. Jack's loud voice drew the attention of those around them. "Jack, I didn't mean to." Tina stammered. "Leave," Jack said, glaring. People shot Tina disapproving looks. She turned pale and left in a hurry. Jack didn't know what had gotten into him. He shouldn't have spoken harshly to Tina, but that's how he felt. He could almost hear Jessie whispering in his ear, "Look at her, showing up at my funeral all dolled up like that. She's such a drama queen. Kick her out." Jack was certain Jessie wouldn't be mad at him for this. After the funeral, life went on for everyone else. But Jack felt stuck in the time when Jessie was still there. He stopped doing surgeries and stayed cooped up in the small home they had shared, unable to move on. The sharp grief of losing Jessie gradually turned into a constant, dull ache. He realized he didn't just love her heart, he loved her, the person. The one who came into his life when he was young, stayed with him for years, and then left as a handful of ashes. He managed to unlock Jessie's diary. The first page read, "Yay, married to Jack." Her neat handwriting filled the page, showing her excitement. Jack's heart ached as he kept reading, page after page. At the start of their new marriage, Jessie filled her diary with little details about her and him. "The tie I bought him yesterday, he wore it to work today. He must think I have pretty good taste." Jack remembered that purple tie. At first, he didn't want to wear it to work, but in the early morning, Jessie sleepily came over and tied it for him. She herself had forgotten about it. Years had passed, and who knows where that tie went. Jack smiled inexplicably. "There was a huge storm outside today. My colleagues and I were stuck downstairs and couldn't get a cab. Jack came to pick me up, like a hero swooping in. So happy. We had a fight today. How dare he forget my birthday? I blocked him for 2 hours. After 2 hours, okay, I was wrong. He prepared a surprise for me." When they had just gotten married, Jessie didn't know the real reason he had proposed. She would act like a new bride, coquettishly demanding things from him, throwing tantrums. He didn't really mind those days. He even kind of liked it. It's been a long time since then, so long that without this diary, he couldn't remember what the lively Jessie was like. Jack read each word slowly, lost in old memories, forgetting the time. He was surrounded by brief moments of happiness, and then, that happiness stopped suddenly on one page. "So he really likes Tina." A simple sentence lay on the rough paper. The writing was blurred. Jessie had cried when she wrote it. Seeing that, Jack felt a hole in his heart. His lips trembled as he gently touched the paper, heartbroken. "Jessie, who told you this?" Right after, he found the answer. Ruth, that young girl he always treated like a child, caring for her in every way. "I hate Ruth. I hate Tina. I hate Jack even more. I won't talk to Jack ever again." Jack's heart wrenched. It was from this moment that Jessie started to wither like a dying flower, losing her vibrance quickly. She stopped messaging him frequently, stopped demanding things. She became quiet and accepted whatever he asked. Her diary went from being updated every 2 days to just once a fortnight. Her words were filled with pain. "Ruth told me Jack would marry her because she looks the most like her sister. I regret having the surgery." From the diary, Jack saw another side of Ruth. She was selfish and mean, constantly saying things to provoke Jessie, making her more and more withdrawn. The night before going to Europe, Jessie left one line, "I want a divorce." Jack's tears fell. He wanted to get up and bring Jessie's belongings closer, but his weak body couldn't handle the action. He accidentally knocked over Jessie's pill bottle. White pills scattered all over the floor. Jack went to pick them up, but when he touched the pills, he froze. He felt like he'd discovered something and crazily brought the pills close to inspect them. Then, his body shook, and awful cries came from his throat. After working for so many years, how could he not recognize these? These aren't the pills he gave Jessie. They are cheap supplements. Why? He desperately searched for clues that Jessie might have left. It turned out that when she came back from Europe, she was still chatting with friends, planning to visit them the next year. Jessie wouldn't have killed herself. The only possibility was that she didn't know the pills had been switched. This thought made Jack so distressed he could hardly breathe. He didn't dare to think if it was an accident or on purpose. Jessie was detail-oriented. She wouldn't have mixed up supplements and life-saving medicine. In the 3rd month of being confined at home, Jack reported to the police. People who knew Jack saw him again and were shocked. He had lost a lot of weight, his eyes sunken, looking like a dying man. He sat in front of the police, like a madman, repeatedly claiming his wife might have been murdered, without any evidence. Tina got a call from the police and rushed there. Ruth followed, timidly saying, "Brother-in-law, please don't be like this. Jess is gone." That sentence set Jack off. He glared at Ruth. Suddenly, he remembered what Mr. Tom had told him. Ruth had continuously tried to get close to Jessie when they were in Europe, and Jessie's illness started acting up around that time. Tina squatted in front of him with a gentle smile. "Jack, it's all in the past. Come home with me, okay?" "Home?" Jack looked at her blankly. "Yes, home, okay." He went home with Tina. Just after entering, he went crazy, rummaging through everything. Tina tried to pull him back, but couldn't. Finally, Jack found Jess's pill bottle in Tina's room. It was identical to the one among Jess's belongings. He trembled as he poured out the pills. Seeing the pills, he suddenly cried out loud. So, the replaced pills were here, and Jessie never knew until she died. Tina squatted beside him, holding Jack, and glared at Ruth. "Ruth, what's going on?" Ruth was clearly panicked, but still somewhat justified. "She took the wrong bottle in Europe. I haven't even blamed her for taking my supplements. I just wanted to punish that woman a bit." Jack suddenly rushed forward, grabbing Ruth by the throat. "Do you know this could kill her?" Tina hesitated, then went to pull Jack's arm. "Jack, stop. She's my sister." Ruth, crying, said, "I didn't know. I just wanted to teach her a lesson." "Sister, say something. Didn't you tell me you'd only come back if Jessie died? I was helping you." Huge tears rolled down Tina's cheeks. "Don't say that." "I didn't." The two women cried together. Jack felt a chill all over his body. He had said terrible things to Jessie, told her she was out of her league, running off to Europe to die. But in the end, it was his own actions that hurt her. Jessie didn't do anything wrong, but because of his indulgence and favoritism, Jessie lost her life. Without a word, Jack pushed away Tina, who was clinging to him, and walked out silently. He couldn't even hear what Tina was shouting behind him. He had only one thought: to avenge Jessie. 3 months after Jessie's death, something big happened in City A. The well-known medical professor Jack repeatedly ran over 2 women with his car, killing them. Finally, he intentionally crashed his car into a tree, causing severe damage to the vehicle. The perpetrator died on the spot. In Jack's phone, there was a message he had written for Jessie. "I'm sorry." He actually wanted to say "I love you" as well, but Jessie probably wouldn't have liked that, so he didn't. Jessie's diary. The date for the heart transplant surgery was set for early April, spring, when everything comes back to life. The surgery was led by the famous surgeon Jack. Lying on the operating table, looking at his face, my heart couldn't help but beat faster. He was the person I secretly liked, but unfortunately, he was always cold to me. The anesthetist joked to ease my tension. "Do you like our Professor Jack?" Maybe my face turned a bit red. She noticed. She placed the mask over my mouth and nose and said softly, "Relax, make a wish." I closed my eyes and silently thought, I want to marry Jack. Maybe because of that wish, I had a long dream. Dreamed of things that never happened. It was almost like a nightmare. In the dream, I lived a short and miserable life. Finally waking up strugglingly from the dream, the monitors beside the bed were beeping. The glossy white ceiling was illuminated by sunlight refracted from outside, shadows of trees swaying, birds flying, and grass growing. I rolled my eyes and saw the vibrant spring scene, filled with hope. "Jessie, you're awake." I turned my head and saw a familiar face. Jack, wearing a white coat, sat by the bed. Maybe because of the contrast with the dream, he seemed very young. Seeing me stare at him without speaking, Jack smiled slightly and took my hand. "The surgery was very successful. Don't worry, I'll accompany you for a walk in a few days." So, the surgery was already over. That was really something to be happy about. Seeing I still didn't speak, Jack said gently, "Maybe, would you like to be my girlfriend?" At this moment, time seemed to flow. Memories rushed back. Years of painful memories surfaced in my mind in an instant. It felt like another life. I couldn't even tell if those things were just a dream or a past life. I blinked, withdrew the hand he was holding, and glanced at the warm spring sunlight outside the window, whispering, "Doctor, thank you for everything you've done for me, but I don't like you." The dream left my mind a bit messy. I needed time to sort things out. Jack was stunned, pursed his lips, and didn't say anything. Not long after, I recovered and met Fred, who came for a checkup. Fred winked at me. "Jessie, I heard you were chasing Jack. How's that going? I said, I gave up. Gave up? Yeah. Fred then smiled. That's probably for the best. Finding someone you like and who also likes you is more important. On the day I was discharged, the spring was beautiful. Fred personally came to see me off. You're recovering well. Remember to take your medication properly. You can have some spicy hot pot, but don't add chili. All right. Then he looked around and said, weird. Jack said he would come to see you off a few days ago. This morning he was babbling about atonement as if possessed. Don't know where he went. In the dream, Jack was the one who drove me home. Now, I had to take a taxi myself. I smiled and said, it doesn't matter. The taxi came, honking in front of the hospital. I waved to Fred. Go back, Dr. Fred. Thank you. That deep sleep during the surgery felt like a lifetime in the dream. This kind of spring. It seemed like I hadn't seen it in a long time. A nearby child happily ran past me carrying a kite. Flowers bloomed everywhere. I didn't notice Jack in a corner, trembling, staring at my back with red eyes. Instead, I turned and walked into my warm, radiant spring.